afternoon again. Hi. So we are in a session, I'm going to sit down in a moment, but we are in a session that Maura and I are going to ask a few questions because this is, as Sarah was talking about, the artist's voice. And the artist's voice in terms of this conversation of can there be gender parity in the art world? Can there be a broader gender parity, race parity, and how does the artist really play a role in that and have a strategy that they use in their work? And so I'm going to go ahead and ask our first question of Guerrilla Girl Alma Thomas. And we are so thrilled to have you here, Alma Thomas, because you are very near and dear to Washington, D.C.'s heart. As an artist who, for 35 years, taught in the middle school here in Washington, D.C., went to Howard University, and we have a couple of amazing works by you in the collection. And so we're just thrilled to have you here. And we're really thrilled that the Guerrilla Girls gave us permission to reproduce a few of their works at the entrance to the performance hall, and so thank you for that. And you all are the beginning. You're the gorilla or the elephant in the room. And you know, you're the ones who were there talking about counting and looking at numbers in terms of persons of color and women. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit, because this data, we're in the world of big data today, and we're now counting, and you were doing it first. Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on the rhetoric of counting?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Is this on? Yes. Is it on? Okay. Yes, as time goes by, the traditional rhetoric of counting difference seems to be inadequate to me. There was a group very early in the 80s of black feminists who put out a book that had a title, which was very shocking title, but over time it's meant more and more. And I think it was the Combahee River Collective, and they put out a book that was called All the Women Are White, All the Blacks Are Men, but some of us are brave. And I think that any woman of color who is in the room probably understands what I'm saying, or what that title is saying. But basically, I myself am struggling to find language that will more accurately represent difference. I think this is a big struggle, not just for the Guerrilla Girls, but for all groups that are interested in, first of all, understanding the problems well enough to fight them. I was recently able to work with an artist whose name was Antony of the Johnsons. And Antony is somebody who has been transitioning in gender, and it's caused her to try to understand how things work in the real world of feminism. She doesn't really understand feminism as something just about women. And there is a strain of progressive thought that is really clear that feminism and anti-racism and ecological struggles are all one struggle. They are not separate struggles. And that if one is a feminist, one must be an anti-racist. If one is an anti-racist, one must be an ecologist. How do we unify the struggle and maximize it if we are not really clear about our part of it and how it connects to other parts of it? And I am really concerned myself. I'm a minority voice wherever I go, including the groups that I belong to. How does one what does the phrase that's still being used 30 years after the Combahee River Collective brought it into question, how does the phrase women and artists of color actually parse out? Who are the women and who are the artists of color? And where in the tables does the woman artist of color fit? One doesn't know. And what does it mean to normalize women while apparently, rhetorically, separating black women as artists of color? It doesn't really quite, so what we have is a situation where the rhetoric of counting brings into question the nature of what is being counted. It's very hard for a woman artist of color to understand how she's being affected by the statistics being gathered for women and the statistics being gathered for artists of color. So, for instance, I think, and we need a more sophisticated approach to gathering the statistics and to rhetorically describing and analyzing the statistics, just in order to know what's happening to us. So, but I think. But I do not have the statistical support necessarily, because it's not really gathered in this way from feminist organizations, which is where I want the statistics to be gathered and where they will be gathered most effectively for me. We don't have statistics that actually show what I suspect is true, but I can't know until I've seen the actual statistics, that the outcomes for white women and for women of color are substantially different. But how different are they? I mean, I also know that women of color and men of color are actually quite disparate in their outcomes, just as disparate as white men and white women. But I don't know how different. And it's really, and the point is that understanding a situation is not gotten in the gross generalities. It's gotten in the nuances to be able to characterize the nuances of these differences. What we need is a language that helps us more gather nuance around the issues of how different women are being affected by social and cultural forces. And so my question as a feminist activist is, what suggestions are there out there? This problem is defeating us, and I mean, it defeats me because anytime I try to get a language, it just doesn't work in a poster. You know, anything other than, you know, women and artists of color, you just can't put it on a poster. And so I totally lost the battle and stopped fighting it a long time ago in the Guerrilla Girls, right? What suggestions do people have for a different way of describing difference?
That's to everyone tonight to try and answer. All right? Maura, do you want to?
Yeah. Am I live here? Does it start on? Oh, well, that's weird. Okay. Do you want to give me that? Sure. That'd be great. Great, thank you. My question's for Nicole. And I saw you nodding a lot while Alma was talking, and so I don't know if you have any follow-up on that, but I would really love for you to talk a little bit about all of the many sort of endeavors that you're involved in right now, which are just enormous. I mean, you could talk for half an hour about all the different kind of things you're doing in addition to the gallery tally, but if you could talk a little bit about these tactics and strategies that you've been trying to employ as a feminist artist and activist.
I'm sorry, could you tell me?
Oh, she's asking us to talk about the practices and strategies that we're employing.
No, it's for
She wants me
Nicole.
to respond to you
Yeah.
with that information. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Alma's absolutely right. I mean, we need to talk about how things are being counted and what's being counted and for whom and why and who's counting. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking, yeah, boy, since starting Gallery Tally 2 years ago, where we're just counting the numbers of male and female identified artists, we count by how people identify themselves, the numbers of male and female artists in commercial galleries who have representation in commercial galleries. And since the project started, I have received countless assignments. Can you also count the number of parents? Can you also count the number of minorities? Can you also count class? And no, I can't. You need to do it too, right? You know, everyone needs to take a part in counting and contributing to the information they want to see out there. But let me back up a little bit, because I think counting is an important strategy, but only in as much as it is a way to open the door for conversations about what else is missing and what we're not seeing. And I like to say, one of my slogans, my kind of chants for myself, is if you don't see something, say something, like the subway things. And the hashtag that I use a lot for this project is we count, meaning those of us who are not counted are meaningful, and we count, we matter, but we also are counting in terms of taking tally. The counting strategy arose very specifically because, as Lori was saying, we have this obsession with big data these days, with BuzzFeed quizzes. Everyone likes to count stuff, and I thought, well, if we're counting stuff, why don't we make it useful, or at least rather than just some sort of quiz on Facebook and then you move on. And it also came about because in Los Angeles, I would have conversations with people in the art world that I knew about the gender and disparities, and everyone would say things like, oh, but it's a lot better than it used to be, or it's not that bad. And I started asking, well, but what are the numbers? And nobody knew. Nobody had any idea what the numbers were. And in fact, I've since read studies that say when looking at the composition of boardrooms or board members and board meetings, when there are 27% women in the room, the men of that constituency perceive it to be over 50%. So we have a major perception problem. I mean, I think, which is part of it. So it's like, for me, the numbers are a way to start that conversation about how what we think may not be so bad anymore, or it actually really is. And you're right, like with women of color in the art world, it's twice as bad as it is, if not more, than for white women. And the same is true with the wage gap. I mean, so all right, so the counting strategy, I'm getting away from your question, so there's so much to say about this. My strategy with the Gallery Tally has been to create a platform by which people can contribute and have a voice and feel like they are participating in a conversation, and to open doors for more information to come in. So Gallery Tally is a crowdsourced project that asks people to help count and to help visualize the data that we've counted. It is open for anyone to count whatever they want. We just started with the framework of artists represented in commercial galleries because I was looking at and thinking about the market. I was thinking about how women artists are employed, how they have viable careers, whether they are supported in the gallery world or not. I mean, so we're not looking at nonprofits. We haven't been looking at museum collections or private collections. I would love to look at auction sales really in depth and know kind of the overall numbers and what that gap is. When we were tallying a couple years ago the differences between the highest selling male and female artists at auction, I mean, the difference is it's 11, women make on average 11% to what men make in auction from the numbers we were able to look at and gather. So we have these few outliers of certain remarkable cases of increase in sales, but when you look overall at like how women's work is valued, it is still radically undervalued, not just in the art world, but everywhere. So for me, the counting is a way to start the conversation again, or continue the conversation about how women's labor continuously is undervalued. I also want to say, I think that it's a capitalist problem. I mean, I think that we need to, counting is a start, but I would love to see us abolish gender. I mean, you're right, we need to talk about not a gender binary, but gender fluidity. We need to talk about getting rid of this male-female binary and take into account trans, agender, intergender, non-gender identifying people in in the spectrum of our culture and of our society. The gender binary is a sexist construct that makes a lot of money for capitalism. We make money off sexism. So like there is not the incentive for a lot of facets of society to get rid of the sexist constructs that we have. Is that me buzzing? I might be sitting, or is that you buzzing? So my strategy with Gallery Tell is to include people and to out the circumstances that are not fair. And once the numbers are out, galleries have to address them. They can choose to not address them, but that's an action as well, right? The choice to ignore it and turn away is an action as well. The contributors to Gallery Tally are all identified. They're all welcome to use whatever aesthetic they want. So it also functions as a repository for the now 2,000 artists that are involved. We've made over 430 posters, each one designed by different artists. So it means if anyone has any doubt about the lack of potential diversity in the artist pool, we have some suggestions that people can go to, just as a start anyway. So that's one strategy.
Thank you.
Simone, in terms of thinking about strategies, and I'm going to back up a little here, you are an amazing studio artist. You have brilliant work, but that is also beautifully made, beautiful technician, and I'm going to try and get this clicker to work. Amazing ceramic sculptures. And I saw that you were doing a project with Creative Time and went, what? Now, as artists in terms of strategy and art as social practice and leaving the studio practice, what was that project like for you? And if you could tell us just a little bit about it and what was behind it.
Well, I started to curate. I started to become involved with performance, and I was curious about performance and started curating an event called the Be Black Baby Party. And then later on, I met Malik Gaines, and he asked me to participate in a performance event on the occasion of Kelly Jones's Now Dig This show at PS1. And for that event, he chose the ballads of Elaine Brown. He gave them to the artists and asked us to respond to them, and I was really shocked because they were not the kind of music I would expect from the Black Panther Party. Elaine Brown was a former member or leader in the Black Panther Party, and her ballads sound more like Bay Area lesbian, kind of Joan Armatrading-ish, you know? So I was really shocked. And then Alondra Nelson had written a book, and that was the most recent scholarship on the Black Panther Party. I really, previous to then, had sort of shied away and was not very knowledgeable about the Black Panthers because I actually had been not impressed with what I understood to be the misogyny involved. So I just hadn't gotten around to it, and I read this book, and her book was about the Free People's Medical Clinic. So when Creative Time came a year later and asked me to think about doing a project, it was already kind of gestating at that point. But I would say that I've always described my work as an ongoing exploration of Black female subjectivity. And even though I change media or discipline, I don't really feel like I've strayed away from that subject matter.
Do you feel like when you think about a social consciousness in art, and as an artist using, or a sense of social responsibility as an extension of one's practice, or just in terms of who they are, do you think that projects like this are, because you just said it's very much an extension of your practice, but do you think that projects like this are getting your message out to an audience that's different in a way that's succeeding with this idea of we're talking about what are the actionables? It's very different than work that's in a gallery. It is work in the social sphere. And so while it's still your continuation of a dialogue that you've started, you're talking to a completely different audience. And I'm just curious about your experience, because you were very present in this project. And maybe you could talk a little bit, because that is a sort of physical switch in terms of your practice, even though you were doing a little bit in performance.
Yeah, I was talking to Gada earlier this morning about how she and I both have some pretty performative things going on inside our studios that no one ever sees, which is work that might be related to women's work. This was a time in which, I feel very proud that I brought the art world into a woman's home. This was the home of Josephine English, who was one of the first gynecologists in New York State. And she also was an activist. She was the gynecologist on all of Malcolm X's children, for example. And I also just discovered a lot of, for me, this was an inquiry into finding modalities and methods of self-reliance in the history of the Black community in Brooklyn. And also, when the Black Panther Party created the Free People's Medical Clinic, it also was a platform for advocacy, and they focused on sickle cell anemia. And in this case, I wanted to focus on the lack of empathy for Black pain. So I feel that Black nurses have for many centuries, filled that gap in empathy for Black pain. So it was interesting to me to turn to these methods. And often the other thing that I happened upon, and I was shocked that I didn't know, is that there had been, and there continued to be, a group of a secret society of Black nurses that operate across the United States and do their work in private. And they've been doing this work since the Underground Railroad. They're actually the oldest Christian fraternal organization in the US. And at one point had numbers as large as 50,000 members. So what I found, and this I think is very specific to African American culture as opposed to other diaspora cultures, because this environment is so hostile to African Americans as minorities. A lot of the activism has happened in private and underground. And so there's a way in which we don't have access or are not as knowledgeable or not as aware of, activist practices that have happened because of the secret nature of the way they were performed.
Yeah, you made yours very public, which is great.
Yeah, I was trying to show what was already there. That's what I was trying to do.
Thank you.
Okay, hey, Gada. So Gada, you have, we'll leave it on that one. Will you go back for a second? Or, well, whatever. There we go. Gada, you've had an extraordinary career as a painter, but a painter in a very unique and different way, insofar as not only do you apply, paint to canvas, but you also paint with your embroidered threads in this sort of extraordinary way, hiding or kind of, concealing some of the imagery that lies behind. But you've moved recently, in the last couple of years, and obsessively, as you told me, into the realm of ceramics. And this is a great example here on the screen. And I wondered, just first of all, the size of this one, I'm not sure. How big is this one? Just curious. Okay.
Like this?
Right. And your paintings are like mammoth usually, so it's a little bit smaller. But can you talk a little bit about this transition to ceramics and how you think it sort of stems or follows very organically from your painting practice?
Okay, just to precise that I still continue to make painting.
Yes.
I always make a lot of different medium in the same time, and I can draw and paint and make ceramics at the same time. So it's not a transition. In a way, it's a new addition to my practice, and I wanted to do it because I have tried metal work before, but the way because I'm not a sculptor, or I didn't know I really am discovering in myself a sculpture side, which is very strange for me. But when I was doing this metal work, I was not able to do it myself. I was saying I was able just to draw, but not to make like the model. And I was very frustrated. So I decided after I was more directing actually. And I said, no, not like this. You can make like this. And so so I decided to go and learn ceramics in order to be able to be in control more for my metal work. So this is what I've done.
Okay, I love what you're saying about it sort of being part and parcel of all of the mediums that you work in. One of the things I'm interested in is by using embroidery in your painted work, that's sort of associated with women's work. And same with ceramics. It's kind of associated with the history of women's production. But I was just hoping also that you could talk a little bit about sort of a conversation that we had yesterday, where I asked you what you think the solution is to this issue of gender disparity. And I don't know if you remember what we said, but I'd love to hear you extrapolate on that.
Well, I think that the problem of women, the woman's problem, as we say, it's not as different for me as Muslim artist, Middle Eastern artist, African artist, because I've been labeled the whole thing. Just artist? No, I'm not artist. I'm something before being artist. And the woman artist is just one example of a category, just so that we are not recognized, or you are recognized as the other. You are marginalized. You are a little less or a lot less. It depends on what is the category you have been labeled on. So this is for me a very big problem that actually I have been discovering while I was working in school. When I grew up I am from Egypt, yes, but I grew up in France. The first example that I have two examples happened to my school. This was in 1984 in France. Women were not allowed to take painting class. Our teacher did not want women in the painting class. Everybody was out. He was teaching technique to the men, and if we wanted to learn painting, we have to ask to the men student in our class. Then he made us all fail in the painting department. He didn't want any woman artist. So this made me think, oh, there is woman artists and men artists. I had never thought about this differentiation in my life. And then the other thing that as well happened in this same year or something, he told me, but why don't you do calligraphy? You are Arab. You must do calligraphy. We have this. So when I said, oh, I am. So I discovered that I am not an artist. I am either this or that. So this has been a very. So each time I'm discovering I'm something from the.
Oh, thank you. Oh, and here are some extraordinary paintings just to show you. And so I think we should. Did you have any more questions, or did you want to? Yeah, sure.
Let's bring it back home to Washington, D.C. Nicole, you have been up to something.
Yeah. I've only been here since Friday, so I haven't had time to do a lot of counting, but I do have some numbers for you. The Hirshhorn of the artists on view, of the artworks on view, 11% are made by women artists right now. Yes. Not so good. Here's a list of the galleries we looked at in order with Liz's help. She's my student from Chapman, sitting in the audience right there, and my sister Siobhan, who's helped with the project too. I'm really happy to have them here. In order of, let's see, highest percentage of men to highest percentage of women. Adamson Gallery has 79% men. I'll just read you the percentages, but if you want real nitty-gritty data, I have it. Civilian Art Gallery, which represents 70% men, but has a much better exhibition record of 50-50, which is awesome. Hemphill Gallery, 65% men. G Fine Art, 64% men. Cornersmith, 63% men. Curator's Office, 61% men. Finally, we get to Randall Scott, 50-50. Addison Replay, 45% men, so 55% women. Marcia Mateka, 56% women. Foundry, 75% women. Burton Marinkovich, 44. Oh, sorry, that's out of place, 56% male. But it's interesting to note, of the small sample that we did of contemporary art galleries, 33, only 4 of them, only 4 of the galleries had 50% women or more, which is about 33%. We keep coming back to this like number of 30, 33, 35, 65. And if you think about it, it's actually like that there's twice as many men represented as women in this place. It's the inverse of what we see in art schools, and that's a real problem. Like, so you see the number of girls enrolled in art schools is between 60 and 80% in undergrad programs and 65 and 70% in grad programs. And then in the galleries, it's 65 to 70% men on average. So that means a male coming out of an art school now, like, and we looked predominantly on the West Coast and East Coast, kind of about the coast, but a male student coming out of art school is twice as likely to get gallery representation as a female student, even though there are twice as many female students aspiring to be artists. So the problem is much greater, of course, than just the numbers, right? It's a starting point, and then you start to ask, what do they really mean? Anyway.
Great, thank you.
you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, you guys. Oh. Can I pass these out? I have, this is a shameless plug, if you count too, I have some postcards for information on Gallery Tell if you want to make a poster or help count or count new things or different things. Or if you don't want to count and you just want to visualize data that we have, you can do that too. If you don't, there's probably not enough for everyone in the audience, so only take one if you're really interested. I have some cards too. And thank you so much to Maura and Lori and Susan for having us. This is a really important conversation. Thank you.